Welcome food fans, picky eaters, the flavor curious, and everyone in between. Nothing makes good food better than good conversation, and your table is ready. Welcome back to another episode of the Food for Thoughtcast with your hosts, Melissa Reagan and Steven Gonzalez, but you can call them Chef. All right, let's get this episode started.
Hey there, food fans. Welcome back to the Food for Thoughtcast with me, your host, Melissa Reagan, and my co-host with the most, Chef Steven Gonzalez. What's up, buddy?
Hello. How's it going?
Hello. It's cold, and Chef and I we're talking right before we started about like how we're both kind of stuffy today.
Yeah.
'Tis the season for that, I suppose.
'Tis the season to be stuffy. I'm gasping for air. It is what it is.
Flash me a signal if you need us to stop.
All you're gonna do is just gonna be like,
mouth breathing. Yeah. So Steve and I both have coffee. Steve, what kind of coffee are you drinking?
Light roasted. It's supposed to be some sort of salted caramel. It's very fruity, but it's not that good. So I won't say the name brand, but it's okay because it's keeping me awake.
I'm sorry to hear that. Well, I have Dunkin'. I've got the Dunkin' Donuts brand, but it is a dark roast. So yeah, It is tasty and a little vanilla syrup, like just a touch, couple drops.
Oh, nice.
So
black, with cream and sugar.
Just black.
Same. I can't do cream and sugar.
Every once in a while, like a splash of a non-dairy milk, but that's usually if I'm drinking like a matcha or a chai or a latte.
Yeah.
But yeah.
You know what's funny is I actually went to Seven Brew. I think it was like last week or the week before, and I got like their so like a sugar-free salted caramel. Like I think it was a latte or something like that. And of course, they're like I wanted sugar-free stuff, but they're pouring like chocolate milk in there, which is loaded full of sugar. And I'm like, well, think about what you just ordered. Okay, that's probably why it's okay. So now it's just like black coffee. Black coffee is what it's always usually been, and that's what it's going to continue to be.
Yeah, for sure. Steve, what was the most amazing thing you ate this week?
So I made ostrich and dumplings finally. I know we talked about it a few episodes ago, and I just haven't been home to cook. So now that's what I made.
Walk me through it.
It cooked just like oxtail. I mean, It was very, very similar. I did about 2.5 hours. I could have let it go just a little bit longer, but it was coming off the bone and all that. It was pretty cool. And, it was just gelatinous and just real thick and hearty, stick to your ribs, hearty, if you will. And it was really good. So the dumplings, I've never made them from scratch before. And if I have, it's been years. So I did like half cake flour, half AP flour, baking powder. I did salt,
you made it from
pepper.
Scratch.
Yeah. And it was very simple. Like I know people have like grandma's recipes. It takes like a day for it to set up and this and that. But I was like, I don't have that kind of time.
Yep.
But I added a roasted garlic. I just smashed it in there and then green onions. And holy cow, they were pretty big. I mean, they were pretty good. So I made them kind of big and they expanded further. But I was like, I'm being lazy and it's cool. And I cooked them in, the stew that I was making. Yeah. I've seen some people make them like just in water and whatnot. And I'm like, there's no flavor in that. So we're just going to throw them in there and pray for the best. And not only did it soak up pretty much the majority of the liquid in there, but it was hearty and it was good. And I would totally do it again. Maybe not with ostrich necks because I have to order that again. But
I love that.
It was really good. And, with all that cream and all that, like it was just hearty, The dumplings were light. They weren't too dense. Yeah, it just all married very well together.
Did you end up doing the green chilies or no?
No, I didn't even throw tomatoes in there either. I was going to, and I was like, I think I'm just adding way too much crap now at this point. Let's just enjoy the essence of ostrich.
Nice. That is so exciting.
It's different to say the least. Now I have ostrich wings to make, and I don't know when I'm going to make them, but we'll make them soon.
Cranberry habanero.
Okay, you know what? I'll have to hit you up when I make them.
I think
remind me that.
I think we discussed raspberry chipotle. Actually, I don't know where cranberry habanero came from, but maybe I'm just in the mood for sweet and spicy. It is 10 a.m.
That or a whiskey glaze.
Mm-hmm.
But either way,
indeed.
Well, I don't even know. I want to do all sorts of things with those. Like I want to sous vide them for a bit, and smoke them, and then let them cool off and fry them. But that's like 3 different cooking methods all for one piece of meat,
Yeah. But sometimes that is what is necessary, is 3 different seasoning, preserving, cooking methods. Sometimes things are a multi-step process,
Right.
Which,
but enough about
we're going to get into
what was
today.
The most amazing thing you had?
I made pizza. I made homemade pizza, and it was delicious. I love a supreme pizza. I don't remember at what point the changeover occurred, but you could not have paid me to eat this supreme pizza when I was a kid because I didn't like black olives. And the adults in my life had convinced me about green bell peppers that they would make me gassy. I don't think that's like not the case, but it made me not eat them. But I'm like, now it's worth it because that classic like marinara, black olive, green pepper, Italian sausage combo and mushrooms is like I cannot get enough of. The only thing I didn't have was mushrooms. I had ground beef in the freezer and I seasoned it like Italian sausage. So like fennel seed, oregano, red chili flake.
I'm picturing all that.
It was amazing.
The only issue I have with the bell peppers is they're always sliced real long. Like I want like smaller pieces. So that
diced.
It's the same way as like when you make a sandwich, you throw bacon and you take a bite and the whole slice of bacon comes out and it pisses you off. Like that's the problem I have with like the green bell peppers.
I chopped the canned black olives up so that there would be a little bit in every bite. I diced a white onion. I diced the green bell pepper. I had a few cheddar cheese slices from Thanksgiving's kind of charcuterie spread. But I had mozzarella and then I had like kind of just nondescript like Aldi tomato sauce that I seasoned up. But I'm not going to lie. The most amazing thing I ate this week, it was superb. And then little chef tip, right, is that I froze the remaining amount of the tomato sauce into an ice cube tray. There's probably people who listen to this maybe that might be too young to know what an ice cube tray is. I don't know. But it's the only thing I use it for is freezing leftovers or making dog treats. But I froze it all into cubes. And so I have like 2 Ziploc baggies of cubes of like essentially pasta sauce. So if I'm going to make a pizza, I can take like 5 or 6 pieces out and let it thaw and that'll be plenty. Or if I'm going to make pasta, I could just use like the whole baggie. But I didn't have to keep the jar. I didn't have to wash a container. I don't have to stain a Tupperware with tomato sauce. So that's how I like to roll.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
I like it.
I like it too. So I like it. I like it a lot.
So do me a favor.
What's that?
Look at your phone because I sent you a picture. It's going to tie in perfectly with today's topic. And it's a topic that I rather enjoy, or at least a preparation technique I like.
Yes.
Whenever I'm getting ready to cook. Especially like...
So I was just going to tell everybody. So Steve sent me this picture, and it has a cross-section of a piece of roasted turkey, and it's showing you the difference between brined and not brined. So
doesn't that make a ton of sense to you?
It does make a ton of sense. And so I know that we had been talking for a few episodes about like brining a turkey or making a pastrami out of turkey or curing a meat or marinating in a certain way. And I just wanted to make sure that everybody had a frame of reference for what we were talking about. So today, that's what we're going to talk about. It's like, why do we brine? What's the difference between a brine and a cure? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
a wet brine versus a dry brine.
A wet brine versus a dry brine. So brine in the word, right? Brine is briny. It's salty. It's like the ocean. It's like the brine that comes in olives, on anchovies, sardines, right? Salty is the name of the game.
Do you like salty?
I do.
I like to add a bunch of different elements to it too, like sweet, salty. I like to add herbs and all that stuff to my brines.
Yeah, it depends on what I'm doing. So the most basic brine for everybody out there is like salt, sugar, and water. Yep. And essentially what you're doing is you're creating something that has the right molecular structure to kind of cross the membrane of the protein. And so you are introducing the salt flavor in, but you're giving the protein the right amount of salt content so that it holds on to moisture. You're making it moist, basically. And so that's the most standard. I like to put peppercorns in mine, bay leaves, like a little apple cider vinegar. You can't go too far with the vinegar, or you'll actually make the skin on the outside of the whatever you're brining tough. But I like just a little acid.
I've never really put acid in mine.
Yeah, I worked for a man several years ago that we brined pork butts for Cuban sandwiches.
Uh-huh.
And I might have this backwards, but my friend Chef Dave can help me out with this. He worked with me. That he was like the coolest sous chef ever, and a great buddy to boot. I can't remember which brine we used for the whole chickens versus the pork butt, but I think that it had some apple cider vinegar in it. I'm almost positive that's where I picked the trick up. So
nice. I'm always a fan of that. The other thing I like about brining is that it just keeps everything juicy.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So explain this to me then. What is the difference between a wet brine and a dry brine?
So essentially, when you hear somebody say that they're going to cure a piece of meat, that's like a dry brine. So there's no liquid.
Mean a cure and a dry brine are the same thing?
Yeah, it's like two ways to get to the same thing. So it all depends on whether you want a giant container of raw meat liquid in your fridge, or you want to put something on a tray and coat it with a salt mixture. So
yeah. For those of y'all listening at home, yeah, I prefer the wet brines over the dry brines personally. But I mean, either way, that flavor gets into the meat; it comes out amazing. What do you prefer, Melissa?
I think it depends on what you're going for. So I think we talked about this in the seasonings and herbs and spices episode, and then I talked about it previously on this kind of steak and beef episode, where if you are wanting to if you're wanting to make kind of like a crust or like sear something on the outside, that I prefer the cure. And you can do it 2 to 3 days ahead. It's just as easy as like just seasoning your steak a couple of days ahead will give it a different flavor profile. For me, I think it depends on what flavor I'm trying to get into the meat. If I just want to make something more moist and it's going to be really simple, I use a wet.
Okay.
If I want to put something very specific onto the outside of the meat and I want it featured as part of the meal, because when you take the product out of the brine, by and large, you're leaving everything behind, right?
Yep.
And so if I have something specific I want to introduce as a flavor profile, like paprika or chili powder, or like guajillo or cinnamon, or anything like that, then I'm going to put that in a dry, like a rub, like a rub that has a little bit more salt in it to get the same effect. So,
cool.
Yeah.
I agree 100%.
That was probably like 5,000 words where I could have used 10. But hi, nice to meet you. My name is Melissa. That's what I do. So just in case you didn't know.
Yeah. No, I mean it's one of those things where I use cure and dry brine kind of interchangeably.
Yeah.
But I know it's not exactly the same, but that's in my head. It's just easier that way. So like the first few times I ever heard like, oh yeah, we're going to dry brine. I'm like, what are you talking about? Don't you mean curing it? And yeah, it was like, no, it's pretty much the same thing. So we're good.
Yeah. So interestingly, you were talking about maybe for Christmas dinner, making a turkey pastrami. Can you tell us what makes pastrami pastrami?
Well, I know a lot. It's a lot of like the seasonings, the pink curing salt, things like that to kind of give that like pink color. And of course, you have spices. I like to use like the allspice and the bay
Mm-hmm.
leaves, and I always kind of throw in just a little bit of like that brown sugar to kind of complement everything. So that way you have more of a well-rounded. Oh, you got some guests today, huh?
I think the backyard has some guests, but they're gonna go handle up on their business.
Oh yeah.
Just like I was telling y'all last week, the podcast barely happens because of the dogs.
Right. But yeah, I mean, like a lot of it has to do with the with just the seasonings. I think a lot of it also has to do again with like the pink curing salt, which gives it that flavor. But you also have to be careful with it because too much pink curing salt can like just not be good for you.
Yeah. Also, you can make yourself sick if you eat too much of it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of both a chemical and a natural process to
Yeah.
kind of preserve this meat. Making pastrami or things like corned beef, super old method of preserving.
Yeah.
Pastrami originated in Romania, but it kind of Eastern Europe and then came over with the Jews, and so it's a wet. You would call it a wet cure, which I know it gets kind of confusing. You're wet curing this meat in a brine, usually beef, traditionally.
Yep.
You put mustard seeds in yours?
I do. I like mustard seeds.
Yeah.
I also like the coriander seeds. I also go a little bit heavier on the ginger because
I love ginger.
I'm not a big ginger person, but I do enjoy it with that because again, it makes everything so well rounded and so everything just complements everything else, you know. And then of course you got I like to throw a bunch of garlic in there too because I like garlic. So, now let me ask you this: how long do you let your stuff, I guess, wet cure when you're making pastrami's?
So probably the last time I made pastrami was maybe. It's been a really long time. What year is it now? 24, 10, 11, maybe 11 years ago. I let mine go for 72 hours.
That's it.
So, yeah. But if it's just for me, Steve, it's like a little baby piece. It's not like a 4 or 5 pounder. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I like to go like 2 weeks for some reason.
Nice.
I just like to push my boundaries and see how long I can go before it like just isn't good anymore. And it all began with me being lazy, doing a tri-tip.
So your Wi-Fi cut out just the right time where it sounded like you bleeped yourself saying whatever you just called yourself. And I kind of love that a lot. A lazy beep. So tri-tip.
Yeah. Let's see. So I was being a worthless beep or a lazy beep. And then
now he's lazy and worthless.
Like I said, I just kind of got lazy. I put a tri-tip in to cure for a bit.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, 2 weeks later went by, and I was like, "Oh, I wonder
if
this is still good." But I've also seen some places cure their stuff up to a month, like up in like New York and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds a bit extreme, but then I'm like, well, if they can do it there, why can't I do 2 weeks? So yeah,
there's a place in Austin. I don't know if it's still there, but it was called the Noble Pig, and they made duck tongue pastrami, and I was blessed to have eaten it several times.
Oh yeah,
so, yeah, on a sandwich. So good.
Nice.
Yeah.
I always go with tri-tip just because I like it. I think a brisket's way too much. And granted, like you were saying, you could just do a small piece of brisket, but I would have to do the whole thing, you know?
Yeah.
So that's just me. But I think it's a lovely way to prepare a piece of meat as well. What else? So duck tongue pastrami, that sounds very exotic. What other, I guess, pieces of proteins have you seen that were a little bit more exotic, like duck tongue?
That was probably the most exotic I had seen thus far. I mean, there's plenty of then we get off into kind of like classic deli preparations like pate and pickled things and loaves and such like that. But yeah, the duck tongue pastrami was kind of like the most out there that I had seen in that preparation. Like I said, I've worked for a couple of folks where we brined different things like pork butt, whole chickens. I don't typically use a wet brine for beef. It's just my preference. I like to wet brine items that need the help, like turkey, pork, and chicken. They don't have as much fat, don't have as much moisture.
Yeah. I've actually done a beef tongue pastrami. Now that we're talking about it, I did that. Yeah, like 10 years ago. That's probably why I don't remember off the top of my head. But it was one of those things where, curiosity killed the cat. And I was like, let's see what happens. And that was like the very first time I've ever done something like that. And it actually came out really good. And I think I made sandwiches or tacos with it. I don't even remember what I made with it, but it was pretty cool. Let me see. I think I'm getting close to that. But yeah, I mean, it's just being creative and trying to come up with like fun ways for I guess like a classic, or what I would think would be a classic protein, So
yeah, totally. I think it's interesting that it's so interesting that everything basically comes back to salt, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Your jerky, your pemmican, all of it. Your cures, your brines. We're talking about bacon. Like salt is an integral part of bacon. Sometimes cured and smoked. Sometimes only one or the other. Right. But pastrami, things like corned beef. It's just interesting to see how salt can preserve, salt can introduce and lock in moisture. It also is flavor, Yep. So it's kind of at the basis of everything. It kind of makes the world go round, Steve.
I think so too. I do like salt.
So this is everybody's annual reminder that dietary salt doesn't actually affect blood pressure. You're welcome. Thanks.
You need a little bit.
So you need a little bit. It's actually like part of your body needs it. So your body needs a little sodium or you'll get really, really sick.
That's true. Have you ever used like that low sodium salt or whatever?
Yeah, I don't mind it. And I like the Mrs. Stash blends too. But like the new salt or like the fake salt substitute, it's okay. Yeah, it's all right. I mean, I see what they're trying to do with it. And I think it's nifty for people who can't have it.
Yeah, I was gonna say I dang it.
Are you gonna cure? Go ahead. No, you first.
I don't even remember what I was gonna say.
That's okay.
I just need to get my head back in the game and stop trying to find this silly beef tongue that I was trying to cure many years ago.
Oh, that sounds so good.
Yeah. Like I said, I've never really messed with that low sodium salt stuff. It seems interesting, but then it's also like, well, wait a minute, like it's kind of like a jumbo shrimp. It's almost like an oxymoron, you know what I'm saying? But I know it's not.
Yeah. It's like a salt substitute. So yeah.
So you were gonna say?
I was just gonna say, when you make the ostrich wings, are you going to brine them? Are you gonna cure them? What are you gonna do? You're gonna marinate them?
I think a dry brine would be good. See, now I'm incorporating dry brines into my life. So what I'll probably do is I'll probably dry brine them and then cryovac them, sous vide them for a bit, or possibly get a smoke on them and then sous vide them.
Nice.
And then let them kind of chill and then just air fry them. That would probably be a good way to do it.
Love it.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Love it.
Yeah, break down all of those tendons and everything. Make it just fall off the bone tender, And then air fry it so that it gets crispy on the outside. Booyah!
Yes. So I have to ask, how big is an ostrich wing?
No, it's like
I kid. I know they're cut up. I'm like, well, what size air fryer are you gonna put ostrich wing in? Like
big enough to put a human in there.
Big enough to put a people's in there, a whole people's.
Yeah. or dogs that like to
bark while we're
interrupt.
trying to podcast.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I always threaten my dogs with that. If you
You
keep
guys,
doing this, I'm going to cook you.
I want to put this on somebody's radar that this is almost 24 ounces of coffee, and I've just crushed it. So I don't know if that's worthy of an award, but like I drank that like my life depended on it. Yeah. Anyways, Steve, when you brine chicken, do you brine only whole chickens? Do you brine pieces? Have you brine chicken breasts? Like, what's usually your strategy? Does it depend on what cut?
A whole chicken, but if I think about it, I will totally brine like chicken breasts because I hate chicken breasts so much because it dries out so fast.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll brine that for a couple days, and pray that it just like comes out juicy and tender. And the problem is like I'll do it for meal prep, and then I'll cut it all up, and it comes out really, really good. And there are times where I don't remember to brine it, and then it just comes out really dry when I cook it. I'm furious, and I'm like dreading to eat any of it. That's why it's sawdust. It can go to the dogs.
What would you recommend for somebody who's going to use a brine for the first time? Is there a ratio? Because like I've brined some things in my youth, all of like my late 20s, and really did the ratio wrong, and it came out salty.
I always go by taste. Honestly, like I don't even know how much salt you're supposed to do. Like so much of salt per gallon of water, this and that. I'm like, nah, you know what? Just throw enough in there where you can taste a little bit of everything. To me, it comes out that much better, and it's a little bit more effective because like if you just throw your salt and your sugar in there, like that's great. But if you can taste the balance of it, you know what I'm saying? And then again, that's where I just get bored and throw a bunch of things in there. And you can taste a little thyme, you can taste a little bit of this brown sugar, you can taste that garlic and onion powder, and
Well, if anybody out there wants to give it a shot and never has, it's essentially a cup of salt to a gallon of water.
Yeah, and see, that's what I thought. I was going to say that, but I was like, it sounds a bit much,
It does sound a bit much, and I think that's why people get kind of like scared to try it without any real guideline. The thing about a brine is like, once you have that ratio, you can add anything else to it. Like I like bay leaves in mine, coriander seed, whole peppercorns. I don't like to put in like a ground spices. It makes it cloudy. And I think, it can kind of discolor the meat, but I like to put in everything in there and then like strain it out after.
Do you ever throw like a beer in there in your brines?
No, only my marinade, interestingly enough.
Yeah.
So how's that work? Still works the same?
I don't know. I just thought about that right now. I'm going to have to try it now.
He's like, me neither.
Yeah, I'm going to have to try that. Good call. So what's the difference between a brine and a marinade?
So brine introduces salt into the product and helps it retain moisture. Marinade is like strictly to change the flavor profile. So from a scientific point of view. Science. Because science.
Yeah. What's your favorite? Do you have like a favorite thing that you marinate or
no? So I really, really like to marinate beef tips. I love marinating beef tips, and pork chops I feel like are really amenable to kind of I'll brine and then do a wet rub, which could be a type of marinade. So it's usually like 3 days out, right? So I like to buy those big bone-in pork chops. I like to brine them. It would be a gallon of water to a cup of salt. I'll put like a half a cup of sugar, peppercorns, bay leaf, and a splash of apple cider vinegar. All those things kind of measure with your heart. Oh, garlic cloves as well, for real.
Garlic.
Or just jarred garlic is fine. And then let it sit in there for 24 to 48 hours. Take it out, pat it dry, and then wet rub with like a little bit of Worcestershire sauce and some more garlic and paprika, chili powder, onion powder, a little bit of ground black pepper, and then let that sit in the fridge uncovered for like 24 hours and then just sear it in a super hot skillet.
Do you ever, like when you sear it in the skillet, do you ever get like that char on the outside?
Yeah, like that crust, like a spice crust.
See, I do the same thing, but I'm always afraid like it's just going to taste burnt. You know what I'm saying?
Well, you need like pork is really lean. That's why they call it the other white meat. And so when I do that, I put fat into the pan. Like I'll do like a tablespoon of butter and like a splash of olive oil.
Gotcha.
To keep keep the olive oil from burning, but then the fats are like the creamy fat and the butter, makes that caramelization and then keeps it from sticking. Because sometimes, you're right. If you season a piece of meat with all dry spices on the outside, you really have a tendency to like burn that when you're trying to sear it, and then it'll just fall off in one big clump. Nothing makes me more angry, but it's just a poor it's because I didn't use the right strategy.
See, this is where I'm like breathing heavy, not because it just sounds good, but because like my allergies are acting up. But I like you're talking about this, and I'm pretty sure listeners could just hear. Oh my goodness, I just can't breathe. I was going up the stairs, and I swear to you, like I had to like hold on to the stair rail and just like.
Oh no!
My wife is like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yes." But that could also be because you're talking about cooking marinated pork. It is
1000% the season is changing, and it's the pollinating outside.
I know it's cold. It's crazy.
I know it's weird. And Steve and I are due after this for like a Sudafed and some Flonase. I just don't know.
I still got chores to do today too.
Steve has chores to do today, and I leave for work in 3 hours. So we'll look at us being a pair.
Right.
Well, Steve, I just I think this is a simple, both a simple and complex topic, but I wanted to take a few minutes today because we talk about these things all the time, and sometimes I'm sure the listeners are like, I don't know how to do that. I don't know what that is. I don't know where to start with that, and so it's just as much to entertain as to educate.
I've had people tell me that they have marinated like select steaks in red wine for about a day or so, and they're like, it melts in your mouth, which it makes me wonder, like, it's a select steak, so does it really? Or I want to try it, but at the same time, I'm like, man, I'm not that adventurous. I know it's saving money, but still, don't think I can do it.
I will always prefer a lower grade of steak for a slow cook method.
Yeah.
So if I'm going to buy select, it's going to be a stew meat or a large muscle group cut so that I can braise it. But I don't doubt that using red wine in a marinade can absolutely make, it's a muscle tenderizer. So 1,000%, I'm sure that makes a huge difference, but hey, maybe you should get brave, Steve. Buy a select
in the name of science.
Buy a select steak, put a little bit of that, leftover. I know there's no such thing in your house, but some of that leftover purple Pachyderm wine.
No, I will get. If you were to do that, you get a wine that's $13 or less, because anything more than that is meant for drinking.
Meant for the drinkies. And then maybe do your special method in the air fryer and let us know how it turns out.
Okay, deal.
Steven, did you get the fruitcake in the mail?
Oh, I did. So I tried that fruitcake for the very first time. It's good. It's a bit dry. So my wife was like, you gotta pour alcohol in it and let it soak up. I'm like, okay. I still haven't done that. So after we wrap this up, I know what I got to do. But that fruitcake is darn good.
Gotta go marinate the fruitcake.
I can see why it's famous.
For anybody who's, tuning in for the first time today, for whatever reason, almost episode 90, thank you very much. Or who's been listening since the beginning, thank you so much. I did send Steve a world famous Collins Street Bakery from Corsicana, Texas fruitcake. In its own right, yeah.
Famous.
No, it's pretty famous. And there's
famous in my own head. I can see why they're really famous.
Me, same. Sometimes I can't even go out to eat by myself because the restaurant can't provide proper security for the screaming fans. So no, they're pretty famous, and I think it's some of the best fruitcake. And I'm so glad that you liked it. I don't understand why it's so polarizing sometimes, but I also get it. I totally get it. But you should Google up on the scandal about the bakery. There's just some scandal attached to it too.
Right.
So Rose. It'll make the fruitcake taste better. Scandal always does.
Yeah.
So
scandal makes things better.
Sometimes.
Better. I think that's why all my food comes out good, because there's some sort of, it's the scandal of the wet brine or the scandal of the dry brine.
Well, Steve, I enjoy getting together with you today just to kind of touch base on this, but I'm going to let you go soak the fruitcake in alcohol and do your chores, and I'm going to go to work. So I'll talk to you soon.
Oh, you have to go to work. That's all.
Yeah, it's okay. I love what I do. It's fine.
It's always nice when you can pay bills and you get paid to do what you like.
Paying bills is really important.
Paying bills does not suck.
So, all right. Well, take care. Got to go. Bye.
Bye.
That's a wrap for today. Until the next episode of the Food for Thoughtcast, make good food, eat good food, share it, and be kind to one another.
Thanks so much for listening today. You are part of what makes us special, and we are so glad you joined us. Don't forget to rate, subscribe, and leave a review. Just like food, delicious podcasts are better when you share them with others. Come back for seconds wherever podcasts are served, and we'll catch you in the next episode of the Food for Thoughtcast.
You can find us on Facebook and Instagram at the Food for Thoughtcast or at www.foodforthoughtcast.com, where you can link to all podcast players, or you can send us an email at foodforthoughtcmc@gmail.com.